Housing Commission meeting. First item on our agenda is public comment.
There's no public comment.
There's no public comment. Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of notes. Anyone have any changes to the notes?
Move we accept the notes.
I'll second it.
Okay, any objection? And it passes. Thank you. And then next item is the Affordable Housing Master Plan 10-year report.
So I will turn it over to Russell Schroeder with the Housing Division.
Thank you, Alex. Good evening. I'm here also with Joel Franklin, another housing planner and CPHD. And I'll share my screen with you so you can all see what's going on here. Hang on, I lost you all. So let me see if I can. There we go. Okay, all set up now. A couple years ago, we moved away from doing annual reports to doing a dashboard. I think you're all familiar with the Affordable Housing Dashboard. And last month, October, was a particularly busy month, as you know, because you had a presentation early in the month. We released the Housing Needs Analysis, which was prepared by George Mason University, really a deep dive into the demographic data and looking at where we are now and where we're likely to go in the future. Also released this 10-year report towards the end of the month, highlighted as part of our celebration. I know a few of you were able to attend that event over at the Navy League. I think it was last week. We also released our 2025 indicators, as well as updating the dashboard and updating the implementation status report, which you also received this week and which is published to our website. So all of these documents can be found on the Affordable Housing Dashboard landing page. And so one thing about the report, as I get into the report, it kind of starts with kind of a high level, how is everything related? How do all these different things that the county has talk to each other and what's going on? It hasn't moved slides. There you go. So, and I'm going to break this down. It's on one page, but that's a vertical orientation, and that doesn't work so well on PowerPoint. So we're going to break it down into 2 slides here. First of all, the overarching policy for the county regarding its physical development is the comprehensive plan. And the Affordable Housing Master Plan is one element of that plan, of that comprehensive plan. There's 12 elements. I'm sure many of you know that the comprehensive plan is currently going through an update where they'll be looking at drafting a new introductory chapter with kind of different areas that weren't defined in the previous one, kind of a new direction for the county for its future growth. The Affordable Housing Master Plan, again, it's a component it responds to and also informs the comprehensive plan. The Affordable Housing Master Plan, as you all know, because we're celebrating 10 years, was adopted 10 years ago, was informed by housing and needs analysis, which we've recreated, rerun that analysis every 5 years just to check ourselves and to make any course adjustments as necessary. And so the master plan itself, informed by data by the housing needs analysis, but the needs analysis also informs implementation, and our implementation frameworks would flow from both our policy and also our observations of trends in housing needs. And so from the Affordable Housing Master Plan, we kind of have, I think it's stated in the report, is we've got 3 main pillars: our data-informed policy, our implementation, and measurement. And so moving on to implementation and measurement. On the implementation side, we've defined what we're going to do. And one of the reports that you received is kind of a status on where we are with various tasks related to the implementation framework. But that really directs the work programs for CPHD, or Community Planning, Housing and Development, the Department of Human Services, and they coordinate their efforts with the Continuum of Care, which is a wider circle that encompasses a broad network of partners addressing homelessness. We also had Housing Arlington working to bring various actors together to enhance and increase our supply of housing in the county. And all this really coordinated through a lot of partner organizations. So it's not the county alone. That's on the implementation side. Measurement really gets down to monitoring and reporting. And so what gets little notice, I think, when we talk about the Affordable Housing Master Plan, the master plan was adopted. Alongside it was the implementation framework, which is the manager's document. It's administrative guidance to staff. The third element of that host of things that work together is a monitoring and reporting plan, which defined how are we going to measure each of these policies and our progress towards them. And so what flows out of that is a set of indicators. I think there's 61 indicators. We publish a data set that goes back to 2010 on most of those indicators, so we can see how things have progressed over time. And we recognize that document is not friendly to look at. And so one of the challenges is to make data more accessible to people in a way that they find usable. And so we took a lot of information from the indicators reports and put that into a more user-friendly dashboard, which allows people to navigate and kind of peruse data in a more intuitive manner than a static PDF of a large Excel file does. And so the results of both of these, are data sets that we have that help us see how we've been doing over time. And so with the 10-year passage since the Affordable Housing Master Plan was approved, we thought that was an appropriate time to actually do another static report, not an annual report, but looking back at the cumulative results of what we've achieved over the last 10 years. So, as you probably more than anybody else are aware, the Affordable Housing Master Plan is really built around three goals: ensuring an adequate housing supply that responds to the community's needs, and promoting access to housing for all segments of the community, and supporting a sustainable community. So in simple words, supply, access, and sustainability are kind of the fundamental goals of the Affordable Housing Master Plan. And so looking at supply, since the plan's adoption, 4,614 committed affordable housing units have been added to the county's inventory, bringing the total number to just under 12,000 units. And that's an increase of 63%, which is pretty significant over that period of time. The plan also has a goal within it, that goal of or a target of having 17.7% of the county's housing stock as affordable to renter households with incomes under 60% of area median income. And we've made significant progress towards this. We started at 9.3% in 2015, and we're at 12.8%. And we're well on our way towards achieving that 17.7 if we keep up the pace. And part of the story with that is that over the last 10 years, not only have we added more committed affordable housing, but we've seen a return of market rate affordable housing, an increase of 55% in the segment below 60% AMI, and an increase of 70% in market rate affordable housing that's affordable at 80% AMI. And I'm going to take just a moment here to switch over to our dashboard just to illustrate how these things interplay. So hopefully this works. One moment. I believe it's here. Oh, that looks like that. Okay. All right. Do you see the dashboard now?
Yes.
Great. So there's three charts on here. The one on the left shows the supply of committed affordable housing. The one in the middle shows the supply of market rate affordable housing. And the one on the right kind of aggregates those all together. And so we can see that, in 2015, when the plan was adopted, and we look at the supply of marks at 60% AMI, it was about 3,600 and was on a trajectory. It had been declining for years. And in 2017, it hit its low point of less than 2,500. We thought that it was likely that we would see those units disappear from the market. But what we've seen has been actually the opposite. They've come back, and they've come back with some force. So this, line showing this increase is important. And it doesn't account for the fact that we have preserved 2,600 formerly market rate affordable units as committed affordable housing. So they're no longer in the Marks ledger, they're over in the committed affordable ledger. And so that's, and when you look at the cumulative total, you really see kind of an increase. And certainly at 80%, there's, with the pandemic and a host of factors. And one of those is attributable to the area median income increasing faster than inflation and faster than rent prices. It doesn't mean that rent prices stayed static, though. So I just wanted to call that out and actually call out oh no, no. We'll go back to that at another time. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. So we'll go back to our regularly scheduled presentation after that sidetrack. The last thing I wanted to point out on the supply goal is our progress towards attaining deeper affordability. Those of you who were at the meeting last month will remember Dr. Waters' look into households at 30% AMI and the significant deficit in housing that's available to people at that income level. And in 2015, when the plan was adopted, there were only 5 committed affordable units that had rent restrictions for households below 30% of the area median income. We've improved. We're at 164, obviously nowhere near 9,000, which is the number of people below, or households below 30% of the area median income. But the county has long held that this is a segment. It's difficult to build to this, that there's a supply side response to that for sure, but there's also a demand side. And that gets us really to our next goal, which is access. And so we have several tools to provide direct rental assistance to very low income residents. And that's through the federal Housing Choice Voucher Program, Permanent Supportive Housing Programs, our Housing Grants Program, which is local. They're key tools that help us enable folks to access housing. And the number of households served through these programs really has increased significantly since 2015. It's gone up to 4,135 in the last year, basically an increase of about 33% among those programs collectively. Eviction prevention is another critical tool to aid households in maintaining access to housing and preventing homelessness. Prior to COVID-19, around 800 households were assisted each year through the county's eviction prevention and emergency rental assistance. Many households were placed under severe economic strain as a result of the pandemic. And in 2020 alone, the number of households seeking eviction prevention and receiving eviction prevention from the county was over 1,500 households, so almost double. And we've seen, as we've come out of the pandemic, that the need and demand for eviction prevention has remained high. Last year, in fiscal year 2025, over 1,600 households received eviction prevention assistance. Cumulatively, over the 10-year period, over 8,000 households have received eviction prevention assistance. It's a significant number, and I think it's one of the tools that we have to really help prevent homelessness. That's an important thing to have in our tool bag. And speaking of homelessness, I wanted to address our permanent supportive housing. It's a very successful, cost-effective combination of affordable housing and services that help people live more stable and productive lives. It's an important tool in addressing homelessness in Arlington. And over the past 10 years, more than 90% of program participants have either maintained their housing or exited the program to other stable housing. And I think that's just an incredible track record and success of this program. And part of the story of that program is the committed affordable housing that's developed and that this commission provides recommendations on to the county board. We strive, and part of our notice of funding opportunity process, we seek to have 10% of housing in all affordable developments as permanent supportive housing. And so that's a great tool that has helped to add 159 permanent supportive housing units to our supply. It's an increase of 57% over the 10-year period. So again, good gains, but there's more to do. And so our third goal, sustainability. Some good things here. All CAFs built over the last 10 years have been Earthcraft certified. That means that they're insured to be using sustainable building practices, energy efficiency, and water efficiency. And furthermore, when there's redevelopment of buildings, the building materials per site plan conditions are required to be recycled. And so that's adding more sustainability to new construction. Also, all of the committed affordable housing produced in the last 10 years has been within a half mile of the county's primary and premium transit network. Important from an affordability point of view because transit's really important in connecting people to jobs, and it's part of the way we do things in Arlington. Another key component to sustainability is making sure that we have our investments in housing are for the long term, that they're not just here today, gone tomorrow. If we have 12,000 units of affordable housing, but they all expire in 5 years, that's not going to get us very far down the road. And so we've been aiming to increase the affordability periods and commitments on our affordable housing. And we've gone from 36 years on average in 2015 or 2016, actually, the year after the plan was adopted, to 51 years on average today in 2025. And that's a significant increase. One of the measures that's included in the indicators that doesn't get a lot of airtime is the unit year. Basically, the concept is each unit, if we count each unit for each year that it's affordable, it gives us a number. And so back in 2016, the first year we calculated that number, it was about 275,000 unit years that we had. Today we have over 600,000 unit years. So basically we've doubled the effective use of our affordable housing. And so that's an incredible achievement, I think. And we're just moving more towards these longer term affordability commitments, which saves us from having to chase around when things expire. I also want to speak to financial stewardship. Responsible stewardship, it's essential to the long-term success of our housing program. For every dollar that the county loans to developers for affordable housing, it leverages for in return. And that from a variety of sources, including private equity, And over the last 10 years, the county has dispersed $366 million for affordable housing projects. And those are loans. And during that same time period, we've had a repayment of $73 million on pre-existing loans. And that's important. And it shows up here when we look at when you approve funding for a project that's going to use county loan funds at AHIF, those come from a variety of sources. And so about 44 cents of every dollar would be coming from the general fund. But developer contributions account for another 24 cents, loan repayments, another 24 cents, recordation fees, another 4 cents, and federal funds, 3 cents. So really, it's good to have multiple funding streams, and the loan repayments are an important part of this, and development contributions, which come from the site plan projects, are also, significant contributors to the county's loan fund. So with that, I think I'll wrap up and let you ask any questions that you may, but take time to look at the report. Definitely, if you're not familiar with the Affordable Housing Dashboard landing page and the dashboard itself, check those out. They're incredible resources. I did want to go back to the dashboard for one thing, just because it's new this year, and new things kind of are good to highlight. As you know, we completed our housing needs analysis. You all witnessed that last month, the presentation. Well, we took a bunch of the data from that on housing need, on housing cost burden, and put it into an interactive page on that dashboard. Basically, you can look by various characteristics: age, income, race, and ethnicity, to see how households are cost burdened within those demographic characteristics, and you can then look at that by renter or owner. So another thing to look at, and the other thing that we updated in the dashboard that's new for this year is more expanded information on each of the renter assistance programs, both housing grants, housing choice vouchers, and permanent supportive housing. So each has a dedicated page with more information on those than was previously available in the dashboard. And with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and turn it back to the commission.
Thank you, Russell. I think how many public commenters?
Just one.
Just one? Doris, are you there?
Yes. Oh, I didn't hear you call. Thank you. Doris Ray. And I was actually part of the task force that worked on the plan, the Affordable Housing Master Plan. And it's exciting to see this after 10 years, and I was sorry to have to miss the anniversary. But at any rate, regarding the affordable housing.
Hey, Doris, can you
master-
speak up, please?
Oh, I am so sorry. Regarding the affordable housing master plan, I wanted to ask. There is a target for production of Type A fully accessible units of 10% of all, when we get to the end of the plan, 10% of all of the CAF units would be fully accessible Type A. And I'm wondering where we are with that target and want to suggest, of course, we had to go further or do something to have more production of units that are fully accessible, and we all knew that back at that time. So I'm wondering when the commission gets to its policy discussion, whether you would consider once again trying to go to the General Assembly and get the statewide building code amended so that the production of fully accessible units is increased to 10% of units, and I think it's appropriate to do that. And we had the at the Disability Advisory Commission, we did have the building code official come. He said that he would be happy if that requirement was there in the building code so it could be enforced. But right now, that target can't be enforced, at least through the building code official. But if it was if that was in the state building code, then he would have to enforce it. And it's kind of like the situation that we've been in where, he'll say there may be an accessibility requirement in the Fair Housing Act or in ADA, and he says, I can't enforce that. It's not if it's not in the building code. So he never said he was against it. He said but it has to be there. And so I'm suggesting that for the commission, and it would accelerate our getting to the 10% of all cash. And so I was wondering what staff thinks about that, and later on what the commission might think about that. I also wanted to note, though, that there is a new federal standard. It's an accessibility standard under ADA Title II, which is access to state and local government services, that will come into effect next summer. And it is important for the county and all of its digital products and electronic products and data websites and mobile apps to be aware of that and to put in place a plan to make sure that we meet those standards, because there are now truly enforceable standards, whereas in the past they were not necessarily. They were a lesser standard, I should put it that way, the Section 504 standards. But now it's in actual physical standards, and perhaps the commission might want to be asking about that in terms of the data we're collecting and sharing with the public on the Affordable Housing Master Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris. Russell?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to respond to Doris. Thank you, Doris, for those comments. I appreciate that. And we do highlight in the 10-year report where we stand on that, and it's one of the areas where we haven't attained our goal. We haven't, and there's some reasons for that. So our actual we added 238 accessible committed affordable units in the last 10 years. And that's only 5% of what we added. And the reason for that is that in new construction, we are consistently getting 10% of the units as accessible, fully accessible type A units. But we are not we had some major acquisitions of older apartments, the Barcroft Apartments, Park Shirlington, apartments in Westover, and the Crystal House 1 and 2 acquisitions that happened. So those were did not have as many accessible units or any accessible units, and we're working, as projects. Obviously, Barcroft's going through various redevelopment phases, and those will include more accessible units than are currently on the site. So. Some setbacks, but it was important to preserve those and to prevent the displacement of those households and those communities. But on the downside of that is there aren't as many accessible units in those apartments. But we do keep tabs on this, and we are aware. Uh, as to whether the building code is the appropriate mechanism to seek redress, I really haven't considered that. So thank you for bringing it up, though.
Russell?
Yes.
So no other public comments? Okay. Then open up to commissioners for questions or comments that folks have. Go ahead, Joe.
Real quick, Russell, and my bad, I really didn't review it before I came. How does the report handle home ownership, affordable home ownership?
I'm not sure. I do believe we have a paragraph in there just about we have we have our MyPet program that chips away year after year, and we work with VHDA to have the Spark program available to the community. But and obviously we did our home ownership study, and we're still awaiting on implementation for some of those things. But there's kind of budget realities, and it hasn't been great budget times. But
Thank you.
that's kind of where we stand on that.
Right. Mr. Chair, I only raise that because I think home ownership is kind of a missing link. Similarly, let me raise another issue. Elderly, are elderly needs identified in the housing master plan?
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Can you, and I'll go look on the dashboard, but how is it basically presented?
Yeah, I on the dashboard, I don't think it's there, but in the indicators report, there's a list of all the
We have like gross numbers of how many seniors are in the county, and the last time I looked, I thought it was around 22,000 that are living in
Mhm.
homes. And I think one of the things that we should be doing, and this was a result of the Culpeper assisted living thing, we have a lot of seniors in the county that if they had other services, they wouldn't have to go to a nursing home in the county. We should be doing things to providing resources where to keep elderly aging in place, et cetera.
Definitely, and I know that our Commission on Aging and Rachel Coates over in DHS has a host of programs, but we're always there's a lot of need, and I think one of the things in the needs analysis, and if you look at the burden rates are really high for folks over 80, especially renters over 80. The numbers are very low compared to other age demographics, but it's of concern because there's very little that can be done. So most of the housing that we have that's housing assistance payments is for elderly, and that's at Claridge House, uh, Woodland Hills, and where else? I'm blanking on it, but and so we recognize there's a need for more. We're happy to see that True Ground was stepping up and as part of Crystal House development. One of those buildings will be a building for older adults. And I believe as in the second phase of Marbella as well, there's housing that's specifically set aside for older adults in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, this is a lot of really nice presentation, and I think a lot of really great progress. It looks like that's awesome. I had a question about the need versus the supply of affordable housing in terms of percentages. So I know the target goal is like 17.7% under, to be affordable under 60% AMI. I'm just wondering, like, what is the percent of people that are under, or households under 60% AMI? And has that changed over the past 10 years?
Yeah, that's and I'd have to look. I don't have the numbers at my fingertips. It's increased slightly. It wasn't at 17.7% in 2015. That was based on our future projection. It was lower than that, and so there was some room for that. Um, it's roughly in that area. 17.7 is really getting minute and fine, but I think it was around 18 when with the analysis that Keith did for the future. And so, that's we're still kind of, that's pretty much our ballpark is around there. So, and the idea again, to make sure that the housing matches people's needs, and we recognize that it currently doesn't, and we're working towards a future where it does.
Thank you. And so for the under 30% area median income, was that target that you mentioned of 9,000 units, is that, that's the number of households that would need?
There's 9,000 households, and so if we break that down, there's approximately a little bit less, 800 and some odd housing units that are subject to housing assistance payments that basically guarantee you pay no more than 30% of your rent towards housing. So it's actually better than the type of affordability that comes with our traditional CAFs. And those typically are housing folks with extremely low incomes. So there's 800 there. There's about 3,500 between housing grants and housing choice vouchers. There's I just had the number, but there's an additional number with permanent supportive housing, and so that gets to 4,000, 4,500 or so. So we're maybe at half the need. Obviously, the units that are restricted at 30 is a small component, but we're looking to increase that as we can over time with each project, and it's a hard lift because we can't really fit more than 10 without all the finance going just becoming untenable. So it's a difficult thing to thread. A lot of the well, I'll just leave it at there. But yes, it's an area that requires more sustained attention.
Thank you.
Russell, from staff's perspective, is it more cost effective for the county to build 30% AMI CAFs, or to build more of them, or to increase our housing grant program to accommodate the extra need?
It's difficult to say, and I don't have an analysis right in front of me, but that's one of the things I think to consider, though, is with our safety net programs, housing grants and housing choice vouchers, et cetera, that those are designed to meet the most vulnerable people in the community, elderly persons with disabilities, and where children are in the household, so families. Other folks, so that leaves single individuals, and single individuals, while they may be extremely low income, there are some other ways that two singles each at 30% AMI, if they move in together, they're not at 30% AMI. I'm not saying that that's a recipe for everyone, but there are some relief valves that are available that aren't public.
Question for you about the uptick in marks. what county policies or programs have an impact on that, if any?
I think, first of all, I think construction, just building more housing helps mitigate the demand in the county and the ability for older apartment buildings to be seeking more rent than they really should or really probably are worth. So to the extent that we've built and we've built fairly, I think over the last decade we've seen a lot of construction, and I think part of the story of that is kind of a filtering at the lower levels of the market that you're saying, class C buildings aren't getting class A rents, and that's how it should be. But when we don't build, then we'll see those rents kind of shoot up again. So I think that's the number one thing I think that the counties has been, able to do to help that sector and for that to come back. Other than that, I think that's the most effective thing. Even though the apartments they're building aren't affordable, but it does play into the whole market.
Other questions? Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, on the question with the slide, with the different sources of funds for CAFs, the financing, for the developer, contribution, does that include the Amazon? Like, is that the average across, including the commercial developments that have taken place, the big commercial developments that we've had, go through?
Yes. And that includes what's been received. So not when they've been approved, but when they've been received. So everything that was received over the last 10 years.
Yeah, because my observation is seeing that the developer contribution is, more development, more contribution, less development, less, of course, depending on the year. And then also just looking at this is at page 10 of the dashboard, the general fund contribution, it seems, I don't know the exact, but it looks like inflation adjusted. It looks like it's leveled. I know this year was lower, but the contribution is somewhat, that side. It seems like there was a big gap increase in the general fund, but it looks like over time it's kind of been, fairly typical, especially compared to overall county budget. I would say probably it's a shrinking share of the county's budget. General fund.
Well, I have nothing to comment on that information, especially regarding general fund, except for that's part of the budget process each year. But the information's out there for you to observe and draw your own conclusions. But clearly, developer contributions, we get these when buildings are delivered, when there's a certificate of occupancy, and so it's not a consistent source of revenue. But 2022, obviously, during the pandemic and that a little bit slower in deliveries, and we didn't receive so much in developer contributions. Loan repayments are also kind of cyclical. Some years we get a lot. Some years we don't get much at all. So I think, which is one reason why in showing the dollar bill, we show this over for what constitutes our fund. It's looking at over a period of time. And note, fair disclaimer here, that we're not including the 150 million for Barcroft, because that was a very unique, once in a lifetime unicorn kind of thing, and would kind of distort everything out of alignment. So remember that we gave 100, or we didn't give, we loaned 150 million for the acquisition of Barcroft, but that was really a kind of an extraordinary and exceptional occurrence.
Hey, Russell, I'm sorry, but on that point, is there a projection of developer contributions that have been approved but not built? Do you have that number also?
We have that, I do not have that at my fingertips, but that number does exist and is knowable.
Okay, and is it publicly available, like on the website somewhere?
I don't believe it's publicly available.
Can we maybe see
Yeah,
that?
Russell, would you be able to share that with us?
I can go back and I can track that down.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Brian?
Yes, a quick question, Russell, about goal one. I think that would fit under goal one. Just looking at the composition of Arlington by household type, and we have upwards of 63, 64% think of the county that are renters. Can you identify one, how many individuals within Arlington, how many households rather, are housing burdened, right? And then what percentage of that are renters?
Yes, one moment. I may not have it may be in the needs analysis might be better. And one moment, need. I believe, I'm going to try something here. If we can drill up, if it lets me do it. Have I turned it off? Yeah, that information it would be in the housing needs analysis, but I mean or I could also put it on my to-do list to communicate back to you all.
No, thank you. I can totally take a look. I just asked because as we're looking at the supply part of this document, something that just kind of stood out to me is that we're not really having a larger conversation around general affordability for individuals who are living over that 60% AMI level that would not qualify for a lot of the great programs that we have. And so if we could get a sense of what the need is, right, what percentage of the county, both that are in single family homes or in multi-unit buildings, I think that would help us kind of identify where to target and try to think of more creative tools as we're having this conversation tonight about what we should be doing to make a dent in this.
So actually that information is available, not in aggregate here, but you can see above 60% AMI, and here we got 60 to 80 basically in this block. And if we hover over 303 households severely cost burdened. So, this isn't and 3,000, 3,700, that aren't severely, but they could be paying, 49% of the rent, some of them. I mean, you would assume some gradation, some kind of blurring of the lines there. But for the most part, that's not where we're seeing a lot of, in percentage wise, above 6 in the 60 to 80%. It's 4% of the households that are severely cost burdened, and 52% that are cost burdened. So there's still a significant number of cost burdened folks, but less severely cost burdened. Whereas in the lower levels here, it's much higher. And then on the owner side, likewise, 60 to 70% AMI, 249 households are severely cost burdened. So there's a number. And again, remember that these are census numbers and they're estimates based on a 5-year sampling, and that there's a margin of error associated with all numbers.
That's right. But I also think it's interesting to look at the comparison between owner to renter, that these numbers flatten pretty consistently across the board for owners, where if you toggle back to renter, the average level of burdenedness between both severely burdened and generally burdened is on average higher, particularly in that mid-range. Of course, those in the lower economic strata, right, between the 30% to 40%, give or take, are burdened across the board. And I see there are a number of tools here trying to improve our capacity to reach deep affordability. I just thought it was worth mentioning that there's kind of an inverse bell in a way, right? You have a severe need on one side, and it kind of has a bit of a tapering, becomes more severe, and then tapers out again once you get to the higher side.
Mhm.
Other questions?
Just a quick question. I know there was one slide where you said that like the CAF units are all within like a half mile of transit. I was just wondering what type of transit, is that metro or is that like bus?
It's in primary and premium transit, so that includes it includes metro. It also includes the bus lines that have service levels that are higher than in some of the more maybe far-flung parts of Arlington where there's less consistent bus service. So it's defined in the metropolitan or in the county's transportation plan. I just don't have the definition on the top of my head.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, well, great. Thank you, Russell, for briefing us on the 10-year report on the Affordable Housing Master Plan. The county has done a lot. There's also a long way to go. So definitely appreciate your and the rest of staff's efforts to support affordability in Arlington.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, next item on our agenda is an affordable housing policy discussion. So as I explained in my email to the commission, I'd really like this to be sort of a brainstorming session. And folks are welcome to suggest policies that they think the county should adopt or programs that the county should adopt to help with affordability in the county. It's okay if some of these may require General Assembly approval or cost money that we don't necessarily know where that's going to come from. The point of today is not to figure out which of these the commission wants to recommend to the county board. It's for us to just kind of throw them on paper. And then I'd really like this to be used next year as we figure out what we want to focus on as a commission to help us have a sense of, okay, here are all the things that we said were possibilities. We can use this to kind of narrow down what we should be focused on next year. So there's definitely going to be things that not everyone on the commission agrees with and things that we should pursue, and that's okay. We're still going to put it down. And the commission will decide later on if any particular policy is something we want to support. So with that said, I know some folks, thank you, Jason and Joe, for emailing in advance some of your suggestions. That's helpful, and I'm happy to put together like a big master list of all the policies that people recommend. But otherwise, happy to have people share those now. And if you all want to also go through what you had sent out previously, and again, we don't have to debate the merits of a proposal if people have questions or they want to understand something, feel free to ask those. We also don't need to belabor every policy to go through in great detail, like this is where it's worked before, this is why I think it's amazing. Sort of a brief explanation, any sort of key points, and then we can try to move on to the next one.
I think we may want to have more of just a general conversation on needs, rental versus home ownership. Since I've been on the commission, I just talked to a lot of our taxpayers, and they say, well, you're doing too much on rental, not enough on housing. You're doing big projects, you're not doing small projects. And then when we're getting into housing styles, they don't like in all of these gorgeous, nice single-family communities, they don't like the big McMansions. And I know I'm bordering on EHO, but I was at a county managers meeting with all the presidents of the civic associations yesterday, and these things came up. So I'm almost thinking maybe we should kind of talk about that more broadly, because there is a perception that all we do is rental and not home ownership. And we do everything big. I Mirabella, the Radnor Civic Association guy cornered me and said, it's a monstrosity. And I said, well, it could have been worse because it does look like a monstrosity. It sits high up there on Route 50 and it sticks out. And they were more not single family, but garden apartments and stuff like that. When I debate people on the bigness, I said, the economics, that's all you can do. You can't do 30 unit, 40 unit and stuff like that. But I think we should have that conversation because if not, we got to educate the taxpayers. So when we do have these policies, they don't sue the county over, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just trying to have a broad conversation of that before we get into particulars. And the particulars that I put together, some of them overlap with Jason, is just to kind of get things on the table. And I commend you for doing that because I really think in this environment, we should be ahead of the game with policies based on history to get more done in this county. So I hope that makes sense.
Joe, I mean, I think in terms of need, I mean, we sort of did just have a conversation about need, you know, looking at the affordable housing master plan and the goals that were set forth and how we're meeting those. When it comes to homeownership versus rental, I think that, you know, my point in the email was we're not just talking about affordability when it comes to rental, we're talking about homeownership as well, like just broadly affordability. So certainly for this discussion, I don't want to exclude, you know, anything. If we're talking about all different housing types. I'm not surprised that, you know, people who pay property taxes are more concerned about their own types of housing than they are about the 60 some odd % of people who don't have that type of housing. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go into like a long
I
discussion.
don't think they don't mind giving it because I think a lot of it, they really don't know what we have here. And that was the other thing when I went on that affordable housing bus tour 2 years ago, I said, God, if all of these people could just see what we're already doing, I think that would help. And the county, to its credit, does videos, do all this stuff, but you know, they just don't look at it. People that are negative, they just want to be negative. So you almost have to put it in. But if they saw what we have here, I mean, you know, we got a lot to be proud about, and it's not wrecking their nice picket fence development. So
Yeah. And I think that getting information out is always a challenge. I was talking to someone yesterday who didn't know we had an election in Virginia on Tuesday. So they saw nothing and didn't vote because they found out too late about the election.
Signs everywhere.
So I think no matter how much information you try to put out there, there's always going to be people, you know, whether it's by choice or what have you, are just not aware of things that are happening and choose to focus their attention on other things. But go ahead.
Right. I mean, I think it's important we talk about our messaging, right? And making sure that people both know that resources exist, they're accessible to folks, which kind of goes a bit to Joe's point. You know, we want to make sure that people know what the county is doing. But I think at the same time, we should probably focus our energies on looking at trying to develop solutions for problems that we don't already have resources for, right? You know, there are going to be some people who was like, you're showing man fire for the first time, and it just became aware of it for the first time. And that's good. That has its place, but in a lot of these instances, and we were just talking a second ago about how we are only about 5% of the way of meeting our need for more housing that are ADA accessible, right? Like, I think that's something that we can't message our way out of, right? We just need to get that capacity. And so if we're going to have this conversation, I think we should focus it around, okay, how are we going to meet these benchmarks that are already being laid out in the master plan?
Any other thoughts on sort of the need side of things before we move into the solutions?
I guess in terms of like communications and stuff, I know we are about to present our recommendations from the Community Engagement Task Force next month and like finalize our recommendations for that. But I imagine there might be some follow-up that needs to happen next year in terms of like following up with the county about like, what are they gonna do about it? Is that something we should add as an agenda item, or is that more just like offline, like we'll just separately do that
As an agenda item for.
for housing commission meetings?
I mean, usually when the housing commission sends a recommendation to the county board, I guess it's just kind of assumed that the chair is responsible for following up to, do something to encourage the board to take action. I think there's some people who think you can just send a letter to the board and then everyone reads it. And then they thoughtfully consider that letter from every commission, and then they decide whether or not they agree with that. In my experience, it's not the case. Most of the time when I meet with them, they haven't read the letters that we've sent them. And it's only because I have the meeting with them that they were forced to read the letter and then consider its points, and then have to explain to me why they do or don't agree with it. Because again, we have 65 commissions in Arlington, and on top of all the members of the public and other interest groups that are vying for time and attention with the board. So I don't know that it needs to be agenda item, although certainly it's probably helpful for me to provide feedback, as I try to do, when I do meet with county board members, to try and advance the things that we've recommended and provide updates on this is what I've heard, or this is what may or may not be happening. And I know certainly like around budget time, like our budget letter, like I'm usually meeting with every county board member to talk through, this is why we want this. And but yeah, and then certainly we could look at in the future how to do that in a way that it's not mostly just the chair doing that. There's a lot that when I became chair that I realized it's just kind of assumed that it's not written anywhere, but it's just assumed that the chair will do that. And that's something that the chair is responsible for, which, can be a lot. And we can see if there's other things that we can have other folks do to lighten the load a little bit, and increase effectiveness with multiple people doing things in the same to pursue the same goal. Okay, let's talk about some housing affordability solutions. Who would like to go first with some of their recommendations?
Just a quick one. This is actually something that I saw in Joe's recommendations. I also agree with point about expediting zoning and permit reviews for affordable housing. Something we've talked about both as a part of our work with the affordable master plan goals, as well as the subcommittee to review the affordable housing ordinances, something that could be a potential area of interest for the county. Loudon is already doing something to that effect, I believe. And I think it just makes sense in order for us to make it easier for us to meet the supply needs that we were just hearing about from Russell. That's one point. I don't want to give all my things to other people.
I emailed it, but I made some revisions so I can hand it out. Jason's list is just as good. Some of it is overlap. And the top three things that I had, the bottom 11, the bottom 11 are things that I just got on the book, and that they're things that have been floating around forever. But I think it's always helpful to just see things in person. And I don't really have to go through these. You can look at them, or I can just go through.
So it would be helpful to go through them just because for people
Okay.
tuning in or watching the video, they won't have a copy of this.
Okay, so the first one would be use.
Screen, or are they simply changed from the email?
This one did change just a tad. I mean, the items are still there. I don't know if you can put it up on the screen.
Yeah, have an extra copy.
I made 11 of them. That's all my printer would. We don't have a high-page printer. Okay, so the first one would be, and I don't know, using AHIP for home ownership. Right now, it's just for rental.
It has been used in the past. I was gonna
Has
say, it has been used in the past for homeownership. Back in 2009, 2010.
That's eons ago. That's the years of the pyramids.
Well, we did get it, because of the organization I worked for at the time got a 2-year AHIP.
And why hasn't anything been done since?
Well, it was for foreclosure work during the big foreclosure
okay.
meltdown.
Yeah.
Grand recession.
Yeah.
Great Recession, whatever you want to call it. So it has been used, but it's AHIP is a 2-year grant and you can only use it once.
Okay.
That's my understanding. But
Okay.
I think it's a great, I'm glad you put it in there. Thank you.
Okay, well, these are things that I think, things that are old that are also new, and you may as well just put them on there. The second one is utilizing a policy that I got to know as president of my civic association. There's a development being proposed called Crestmont, and they're using a very novel technique of transfer development units by taking 120 equity of Crestmont, it's a 240 project, and transferring it to AHC for them to use somewhere else and develop. This is in addition to, and I think it's more for bonus density. And this is in addition to the developer contribution and the CAFs and stuff like that. So I think, and based on the work that Brian did on the housing ordinance, where we kind of punted a little bit on bonus density, I think this is a very novel thing to look at as a county-wide thing. And it's very hard to explain, and those that don't know about it will get a visit by the team that's proposing it. But it's almost like the Fed window, where banks go to the Fed window for discounts or whatever. This could almost be where the county acts as a window for bonus density, and developers would be proposing. And in addition to everything else they're doing, they would use equity there to transfer to go somewhere else, be it preservation, be it somewhere for another housing need in the county. Poor Margaret, you're looking puzzled. I was puzzled.
No.
Let me tell you, I was puzzled when it was first explained to me also. But all I'm saying is, I think it is worth us looking at, and I do know the Macy's project did a transfer of development rights, but it was different because it was the same entity. This one is a different entity in Crestmont, my community. It is the developer, I think it's Sentinel or whatever, whoever they are, and it's going to AHC. So that's something that we should look at. The third item is something that I picked up with the Civic Federation. They have their own housing subcommittee, and they're looking at this open door for new construction ownership that is based on a New York City program. So it's outlined here, and they actually met with the county staff on it and socialized it with the county staff. So I added it to the list there. And again, it's a little bit home ownership. I'm a little bit biased towards home ownership through my 50 years of federal career, the last 18 years with the National Association of Realtors. So I'm a little tarnished on the home ownership, but I care deeply about equity for those that don't have it. And rent just doesn't give people equity. Home ownership gives them equity and pyramid up the housing ladder. The other items, we can go through there, a lot of them we've seen before. Expedited zoning and permit reviews for affordable housing. Loudoun County has an example. Brian mentioned that. Doing more to activate public land and co-location with community facilities. This is something, there's a movement out there. The American Enterprise Institute has been doing a lot of work on using vacant land. Vacant land in Arlington is extremely limited, but at the last meeting, we had a discussion of the bus depot near Washington and Lee. Remember Washington and Lee, where we used to get our COVID shots during COVID, where you had to line up in line and get your COVID shots. I'm looking at that piece of property there, and I'm saying, it's really a shame that we're warehousing buses there, where we could use all of that land. It's probably 4 or 5 acres to do starter homes for first-time home buyers. And the movement is to do starter homes on 1,500 to 2,000 square foot lots and do homes of like 1,200 square feet. And let me tell you, it isn't only us, it is throughout the whole United States that we have this home ownership problem. And as you know, the realtors just came out with a report. The average age of a first-time home buyer is 40 years old. That is really pathetic. That is a wake-up call. It used to be 38 years, it's now 40 years. It's getting worse and worse. So if you talk about housing need, that report in itself should give a chill to people. The third one is reducing minimum lot size of single-family homes and townhouses. Basically, I just kind of discussed that. Houston has a lot of area. Look at Texas. If you look at Texas, San Antonio, I'm looking at new builder homes there. You can buy new builder homes for 230,000. All right. I mean, Texas has done a lot there. Houston, Austin, San Antonio. 4, relatedly streamline the partial division process to enable the creation of smaller lots. 5, remove owner occupancy requirements for accessory dwelling units and allow owners to create condominium structures so that they can be owned outright. California just did this, and I think I sent articles around on that. So all of these ideas are out there. They're not new and novel. Throughout the United States of America, people have used these things. 6, adopt a pattern book of pre-approved starter home designs. Okay, that goes along. Advocate for single stair reform of state code. Jason has been talking about that forever. In fact, isn't that done? Is that moving at the state level?
There's been a submission to allow 4 stories for the next, cycle for, I think will be up for adoption in 2027, I believe. So it's still ongoing right now.
So not going through the legislative route, going through the administrative.
I mean, it still could go. I mean, there's nothing says it can't, but
Right.
at least at the, I know, I think like Baltimore actually just.
But you see, these are things that other communities are doing, and I don't know if it's a state or local issue, but it's a no-brainer. I mean, we should just start doing it because we have to reduce the cost of housing and stuff like that. 8, allow buildings with 6 or fewer units to use residential single-family instead of commercial building codes. 9, allow small condo apartment buildings to use residential elevator standards instead of multifamily commercial standards. That's another cost feature. 10, potential EHM missing middle amendments. Allow for site aggregation, resubmission to increase the number of potential fee simple townhomes. Reduce prescriptive rules on the location of parking. I know that may be a little controversial, but in some areas it may work. And then the final one that I kind of like is create a revolving condo acquisition rehab fund to help revitalize aging condo stock, particularly along Columbia Pike, for example, and you can read the rest. So these are just ideas that I've picked up. I've talked to a lot of people that are far smarter than I am at the local level because I've been tarnished with 50 years of federal housing policy.
Thank you, Joe. Would like to go next.
Just a quick point about manufactured homes and modular homes. I've been doing more and more research on it, and I had a conversation with a few folks in the community about it, just as a way to possibly meet some of our building needs. One of the biggest concerns around it was materials, but now there've been a lot of innovations in getting materials that are both very durable, but also easy to manufacture out there. And a lot of research has been done by Brookings, Urban Institute on just like, this is a key way to actually meet like the building necessity, right, for our supply. I also think it kind of dovetails nicely with labor because then you can create a pipeline for people to train and get practice with manufacturing these homes. And I think this is a way for us, it would probably be a state level recommendation, but I think it's something that we should take up.
Brian, can you just clarify, like, what exactly are manufactured homes? What does it look like for them to be built?
Call cross. I meant to put that on the list, so thank you for raising it.
Oh, of course. And I'll get into definitions on it. So if you're thinking like, like a Lego set almost, right? Like there is a very clear pattern to what this development will look like. And what you can do is basically manufacture it in a warehouse and then send it out to wherever it needs to go and then just kind of lay it down or build it on site, but all of the pieces together
Assembly.
can be assembled quickly, right? Exactly. And one of the, as I mentioned, one of the key hurdles was materials, right? And also look, right? People had concern both at a material level with what the constructions were being comprised of, but also they didn't want to get into the whole like Levittown situation where you just got rows and rows of the same house over repeating. But that's become kind of a non-issue, right? Recently, as we've gotten more and more adept at creating not only novel materials that meet the need while also keeping the cost low, but also have a somewhat individualized looks. You can pick through basically a sort of like a flip book, right? Like a catalog and see, okay, this is how I want to. Yeah, no, exactly. The Sears catalog for a house, which actually Sears
I
used to do
grew up,
something like
I
that.
grew up in a house that was a kit house from Sears.
Yeah.
It lasted 100 years. It's in good shape. I mean,
Yeah, and this is effectively what that is, built out at scale, right? And it's, I think, a great way for us to meet this need while also having things that do last for a long time. That was one of the big concerns. People would come up, and there was this thing that was floating around on social media of people yelling at a local meeting about, oh, these houses are basically just going to be like popsicle stick houses, right? You put them up and then they'll just fall apart in like 10, 20 years. Like, no, these materials will last you 50 plus years. And I think that's really valuable. I think we should really invest in this.
So Brian, help me understand, what is the policy change then? Is it like, is there some barrier to doing this now in Virginia? Or,
So it's twofold. It's one, zoning. That's one of the big barriers. The other one is just investments on a state level, right? So there are no, to the best of my knowledge, there are no states that are currently tackling both ends of this problem, right? Addressing the zoning issue as well as addressing just the like almost like New Deal level of investment required at the state level to get these out fast
I
enough.
would say that Virginia housing is working.
Yeah, they got
Yeah.
that. And Fannie and Freddie and FHA will allow financing. There's a development up in Maryland that I went to called something McGuire Woods, 200 unit development. They got 15 of them already built. They're having problems with the others, but I went up there for the groundbreaking. The FHA commissioner was there, the director of Fannie and the overseer of Fannie and Freddie, and Fannie and Freddie. And the big news was Fannie and Freddie because they are actually lending and financing of these things, and they're actually called cross mods because it used to be a mobile home and you put two of them together. And at federal law, they still require the chassis, but there's legislation to remove the chassis on it. So there's been, I mean, there's a lot of work on it. California has done a lot. They're using it for ADUs and now they're doing condos. So this is something definitely we should be doing. In fact, when Michelle Winter was here with Community Land Trust, in Loudoun County, they have a community land trust with a cross mod and habitat.
For the zoning.
It's basically it's zoning. And it used, yeah, but these things,
They are being worked on
look,
as we speak.
they look fine.
Yeah.
They look great.
Look fine.
They don't look any different.
So that's one point. Another one on the renter consumer side, the organizations like Virginia Public Law Center that are discussing it right now, but looking at the side of renter consumer rights, as I mentioned, there have been obviously a couple of lawsuits over the last several years involving companies like RealPage that have partnered with Greystar, JBG Smith was mentioned, Equity Residential was another one of these landlord companies that effectively they were using non-market data shared between one another to aggregate information and create a unitary pricing for the rents, which in effect would be a violation of the Sherman antitrust law. And so there was a settlement recently, actually, in DC. It was one of the first localities, I think, along with like New Jersey and a few others. There were multiple attorney generals that back in 2024 filed collectively, but they recently settled with DC for multiple settlements of like millions of dollars. And while they didn't claim wrongdoing, it's a little interesting that you're willing to give over a couple $1 million. We didn't do anything wrong. That being said, I think it's something that we should look into because when DC specifically was investigating this, they looked at the DC metropolitan area. They didn't just limit it specifically to DC. So some of the properties that were being identified, I live in one of them. I found that out. I was like, oh, interesting. That's good to know. But I think that's something that we should be looking at and putting forward to our General Assembly and to our new Attorney General coming next year for them to investigate. Because I think if we're going to talk about, market distortions, there's few greater market distortions than monopolizing, right, your market power. So I think that's something we should be looking
I
at.
do want to say that the degree that we can, I want to keep this separate from our legislative priority sort of brainstorming, which we do like separately, because I want this to really focus on things that we want Arlington to do. It could require General Assembly approval for them to do it, but not because the scope expands drastically if we go to what should Virginia, be doing to address affordability too. So I want to keep this discussion really focused on what should Arlington be doing. It can have elements related to, well, the state has to pass a law to allow them to do X, Y, and Z. So if you were recommending that like Arlington, like sue landlords to, who are doing price fixing or something, but yeah, I want to try to keep the scope more limited to like what Arlington County.
Well, I'm not opposed to that. I think ultimately this would find its way to the Attorney General's desk,
That's right.
but
Go down now. So. And not maybe specifically for you, but on the aggregate level, they are sort of stabilizing and going down.
Well, and that's where one of my suggestions, though simplistic, it is the concept of rent stabilization. Because, Montgomery County's got it, Prince George's County's got it, DC's got it. We don't.
I have that on my list as well.
it's a DC point.
It's simplistic, but
And there are a lot of ways, to get at the problem. I think that's
yeah,
one way.
there's ways to do stabilization.
Exactly.
There's various ways to do stabilization, but it's not rent control. It's just stabilization, but it just,
It is, they will say it's rent control.
it's
So,
not.
I know, but
Well, they'll say it. Obviously that doesn't necessarily make it true. And I think your point, right? You can look at aggregate data across a number of localities, because taking one example, both for and against something, isn't a data driven approach, right? You can cherry pick what you're looking at.
I'm saying the real page is a real issue. I'm not saying that isn't, I'm agreeing with that. But I'm just saying, when you talk about rent stabilization stuff, they'll label it rent control, right?
Oh, I know the opponents.
Okay, yeah. And yeah.
And you and I can beg to differ on that
And
one.
we don't have to debate the merits of any of
Right.
these.
But on his issue, it's a real issue, and we discussed it during the legislative, during the legislative thing. We decided the courts were handling it, and that's the way we left it off. But I think, it's something, if it's happening in the county, we should bring it to the attention of the county staff or whatever. And if there are allegations, they should be called out and investigated.
I actually would agree with Margaret's point, though. I think we should be looking at multiple angles to address a particular issue, which is rents, even if prices are slightly decreasing or stabilizing, are still over the national average here in Arlington. The average rent here is about $2,600. National average about 2,000. So,
But then again, you really can't compare us to the national average because of our land costs.
Right.
well, that's
And the construction cost.
Right.
And you look at Roslyn, the rents are higher in Roslyn than they are in Columbia Pike.
No, and I'm not comparing that. I'm
No.
just saying it's.
And again, we don't need to debate the merits of any particular policy tonight. We're just getting them down on paper, and then we'll figure out how we want to consider any of these for next year. But yeah, I just want to get them on paper so that I have a better sense of like, what is the commission thinking? What is the realm of possibility that we should be looking at? When we figure out like, what should we have a subcommittee next year? Should they be focused on? Things like that. Okay, other things?
John, me to go over the.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can pull up, or I can. So, yeah, I have, somewhat similar to, Joe's, but I won't like belabor his points, but I'll just add in a couple of,
I will say, we're not here to debate, but if you have questions or you don't understand something, please ask those questions.
Is it in this doc or?
yeah, it's the Google Doc.
Yeah, I think it's that doc right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a couple of ideas. EHO, of course, eliminates some of the costly barriers. And I just want to point out, I like, I think home ownership and specifically home ownership for below median income is possible for EHO. And I think Seattle is like the best case of like, okay, how do we actually do it? Because, and even actually there's one Habitat for Humanity right now is at the Reeves House. They're building an, that's EHO, right? Or not EHO, but it's a missing middle.
House. Reeves House?
Yeah.
Oh, it's being built by Habitat?
In Beaumont, they're.
Yeah.
No, that's
No,
a,
that's,
that's a
that's.
different, that's a different animal.
Arch. or-
That's for people,
It's for disabled people.
disabled people. It's not,
That's not a Habitat?
no, it's
Okay.
not a regular.
It's
And
Habitat.
it's. Well, it's not Habitat.
Well, Habitat is building it, but it's not
Oh.
Habitat.
They won't be the owners of it.
They won't be the owners of it.
Yes.
Right. Okay, but yeah, not,
Arch.
right. So no, yeah, not in the sense that the people living will be homeowners, but Habitat is building that. So I just, as an example, like Habitat could build,
Sorry, I have to figure out
different situation. Describing.
I would, yeah, take it out because it's a special situation.
Yes. 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 Yeah.
Right. But my point is that in Seattle, Habitat, they're building homes that are EHO, bigger, of course, but the same sort of very quick, not a 10, whatever your process that they're housing people in missing middle housing at well below and it's home ownership. So that's just, I think, if we can get to the regulatory environment that they have, that's feasible into EHO, which I think is very possible. The next thing on EHO is the homeowner incentive. So this would be a purely incentive-based thing. So it would actually provide value to the current homeowner in two tiers. One tier would just be a base tier for any homeowner can access technical assistance or maybe like a small grant, like 5,000 or so, maybe just to consult the architect or things like that, just to make things easy so that you can have that exploratory discussion. And then the other tier would be for homeowners that are in the real estate tax relief program. And so this would be, homeowners that really, having their property taxes either delayed or not have to pay. And I think that this could be, you give a substantial amount of money to say, hey, instead of just, not having to pay taxes on your property, we're going to give you like a lot of cash up front or huge grant to say, hey, you could now either move into another EHO that's being built, freeing up that property to become an EHO, or use that same house to become EHO. So, and again, the average value is 684,000, which in an EHO, depending on where you're at in Arlington, which can be a pretty nice and if you a good amount of space. And when you look at the size of the new construction with the open floor plans, it can feel almost at that same size. So you're really giving people to not just age in place, but age in place with super a lot of dignity and build community and people around. So it's not the situation that we see a lot of times where someone's in their home and then they pass away and then the family comes in and the house has been declining and it becomes a not affordable house after it all. So this can help really provide nothing punitive at all, just a pure.
So Jason, can you help me understand? So the second piece of this is specifically saying for elderly residents who are participating in the real estate tax relief program, that they would, making eligible like grants or technical assistance for them to turn their existing homes into EHOs.
In other words, tear it down.
Yeah, but they could like let's say they had to or we give like so there'd be like a big because they're already like not paying the taxes on that, so that's like whatever that money could be, future value or whatever. I mean, it would be again subsidized, but they could stay in place or like move to a rental for a year while it's being built, move back, or find another property and they can just move there once that's built. Find a again.
Essentially saying like, hey, if you build a triplex here, you could stay in one of the units, you get to stay on your same place in the neighborhood, but you're downsizing and then you're selling or renting out like the other units?
Yeah, well,
I
they,
don't, I
well,
mean,
they would get, like, they, like, what would happen is like, they would sell essentially, like, so, I don't know the details, like, but they could essentially like sell the property, get all that equity. The county would contribute a subsidy because they're already getting subsidy with the tax subsidy, so they would get that. And then that would enable them to either, provide assistance while they live somewhere else to, be built, or like they could sell the property and then move in. And then it's like, wow, like you just got all this cash to essentially change housing situation. So it can be just that incentive so that they're not, especially if you're in a house, then there's a lot of maintenance that needs to be done. It's like, hey, we're gonna give like, I don't know the range, but it could be like 20, 30, or 40, 50, whatever amount of money to these households that were already not getting in the property tax. And then that site is now going to generate a lot more property tax once it's just as a pure incentive. And then next, I just have pre-approved EHO designs. A lot of other cities, they have like the I think especially they call it like in like other cities, Arlington, we get up like the stack 6 or whatever, the Arlington 6, and that can be like a thing. And then the pre-approved designs, again, really target home sizes less than 1,500 square feet. Then for CAFs, housing on county-owned land, I think there should be any major capital investment of land in Arlington, library, rec centers. That's prime for housing because Arlington, we control the land. We don't need to sell it to make a profit. So any center, it's up for potential renovation, redevelopment, and then that could be a major source of CAFs. Like you look at like Boston at the Central Library. I don't know what the timeline is, but like, if we want an awesome new library there, right in the heart of Boston, okay, let's build this beautiful like CAF residence, and then on the park and all that sort of thing. TDR, Joe kind of covered that. FAR-based zoning limitations, I think going by FAR, right now we just use FAR as a limitation for the most dense areas right next to Metro, like in Roslyn. But I think if we spread this out further and allow more units to be built inside buildings instead of limiting by units per acre, we'll get much smaller homes that are being built. A lot of the approvals that have come in, they are fairly large units, which is I mean it can be helpful for larger households, but especially if we want to do more CAFs or AMI, having a 300 and others. If you look at the Wendy, I mean, they have the beds that come out of the ceiling because they're 300 square feet, and that's but the thing is that we do FAR based on the most expensive land. So if we do if we build a 300-foot studio outside of Metro Corridor, we can get some pretty serious affordability there. So that's that. And then tax abatement for CAFs would need approval from the General Assembly, but this is just a change of funding source so that we can expedite CAF delivery and more equitably fund CAF production.
Thank you. I can go next. Some of our talked about, thank you, and rent stabilization, streamlined site plan process for 100% affordable housing developments. I also would like land acquisition fund for community land trusts. I think the biggest barrier to doing community land trust in Arlington is you need a big pot of money to make that happen. That would be nice. Also expanding tenant assistance through the tenant assistance fund for tenants displaced by redevelopment. So right now for like by right, like redevelopment, tenants are kind of on their own. Like if they're displaced, they just get evicted. The county can use the tenant assistance fund to help them, but they normally don't. They only do that, I think, there's limitations on it. I would like to see that expanded for basically, whether it's income based or what, but more widely making it easier for people who are displaced. We can't stop the by right redevelopment that displaces them, but we can do something to make sure that they're, they have a bridge to wherever they're going to go next. I'd really like to increase the housing grant coverage from 60% to 70% of rent. So right now, for the housing grant program, recipients have to pay 40% of rent, whereas for housing choice vouchers, it's 30%. love to see those made equal. What we're talking about there is more money. The county has to provide a lot more money to make that happen. They tried to do it a couple of years ago, and I guess they screwed it up and it wasn't able to move forward. I think they did when the board made the decision. Apparently, they didn't realize how much money that was going to cost, and so it didn't end up moving forward. Also, I at least would like to explore having a public housing authority in Arlington and looking at the feasibility of doing public housing with local funds. I think the system that we use now, with our nonprofit partners works well. But I would like to see, and I know other communities like Montgomery County have done really amazing things through their public housing authority, and buying units for either affordable home ownership or to make them essentially caps as they, are developed through like their site plan process. And that's an option that Arlington doesn't have because we don't have a public housing authority. We don't do public housing. So I think having that, which I know is controversial and it would be a big change, and the board would lose some control over how some of the funding is divvied out. But I think it's something worth looking into.
That requires state.
Mhm.
Well, I think it's a ballot initiative that Arlington has to do.
Public housing authorities are authorized by the state.
Yeah, but I thought because we've tried to do it in Arlington before, and it was like a signature petition drive to get it on the ballot. I believe it's a local referendum to create a public housing authority. And we just, because the board has never come out in favor, and there's kind of like a whisper campaign of like, oh, why do you want to change things? Like, we've got a good thing going. Like, well, let's not change. And no one super credible, I think, has come out to say like, let's do it. So but that's my understanding is that Arlington could adopt one, just like all of our neighbors, but we would have to go through a ballot like referendum.
Look at what they did, whatever it was, many, many years ago. They found out there was a study, I believe.
I would change the name of public housing and call it a finance development, just like Montgomery County, whatever Montgomery County's called. What's Montgomery County called?
It's called the Housing Opportunities Commission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I
You
would,
can name it anything.
I would
you
call
want.
it, I would call it something else because, and this is my federal background, and I worked on the 1989 legislation that completely gutted conventional public housing. And we don't have it anymore, but a lot of people still think of that. And the people in this county that voted against it had that probably in their mind. So I think it's a good idea, but just call it something else.
yeah, I mean, I think the
A
term that
financing
Virginia
authority.
uses public housing authority, but like,
Yeah.
I hear you.
And you could be right, because if Arlington's getting housing choice vouchers,
So
they are authorized in some way, so they've just done it so that it's not coming through an authority.
Right.
So
we
there must be
technically,
something
we have a
funky.
federal public housing authority. It's
I thought
the
it-
Housing Assistance Bureau, and DHS functions as that for the housing choice vouchers.
Right.
But we don't have it, like the state does not recognize it as a public housing authority.
Correct.
So we're not actually able to operate public. That's why like Arlington can't own housing because we don't have that. And my understanding is that to do that, it would be a ballot referendum in Arlington. But I could do some more digging. But it's something that I've been thinking about for years and have had various conversations with staff and others about it. And the main thing is just like, without data proving that it's better, they're like, why change? And I'm like, well, can we get the data? They're like, why? What we're doing now is fine. But yeah, I think it's worth looking into. And then lastly, I had, and this is already part of the county's goals, but I would like this to happen faster than I think the county's planning to do it. Changing the definition of family in our zoning ordinance to include more unrelated individuals per household. This is part of our fair housing plan. It's already something the county has said they're planning to look into and make a change. But I think it's on, I don't know if that's 2 years out for them starting the process to look at it or what, but, and it was in the updates that you had sent out about the Affordable Housing Master Plan implementation and the Fair Housing Plan. That's what I had.
I like that one because one of the proposals that I have, I call it the Golden Girls model, that we should be allowing elderly people, elderly women or men to live in, to rent a 3-story house in Yorktown. I mean, and this prevents people, it helps the loneliness thing and it helps them from their financial situation. It's not good for the assisted living, those elderly that need the services and stuff like that, but it frees up the Culpepers and the independent elderly units that we're building. It gives them other options. So I like that definition change.
Katie, did you have?
That was actually the only one I was thinking.
Okay.
I have one, throw it on the table, in the spirit of trying to increase overall housing stock to achieve greater affordability. Yeah, I don't know if this comes in like the form of a review of several cities that have done this, but looking at what the optimal rate of return on investment for AIF contributions is, because developers contribute a certain amount of money, or have to have a certain number of affordable units on site, off site, whatever the options are. But understanding what's the optimal contribution to maximize the number of units in any given development. Obviously, there's some optimal, right? Like requiring X number of more affordable units reduces the amount of market rate affordable units. At some point, that ratio is not optimal. So I'd love to explore assessing what that
Is that kind of like looking back at what we'd recommended to the county board about like having that work group that would look at that? Okay.
And I think maybe it's like a part 2, because look at that. What the subgroup did was enabling the county board to allow those contributions to change, right? The formula to change. This is sort of a part 2. Okay. Now that we can shift what the contribution is, what is the optimal contribution to make sure we're not suboptimally reducing the number of market rate units?
I have one. I want to talk about you have individuals. I saw that they had the eviction prevention, but then there's unfortunately some people who, that got, evicted, and some jurisdictions have, I guess they want to call it second chance, but there's nothing here to help the individuals who were and they need a place to stay. So now you created homelessness. So if the county is, really there to, saying that they're going to help individuals out, a part of that eviction program that they have, there should be somewhere in there where individuals who end up being evicted should still get some type of assistance, because after that, they're just either out in a cold or they have to leave the county. So why should you have to leave? Because no other apartment complex, because once that's on your record, the complexes deny you because they see it right there. So it's like you're double or triple jeopardized, or jeopardy, whatever the word I want to use, due to the eviction. It's like you can't pick yourself back up because the apartment complexes won't rent to you because that is on your record.
Yeah.
So it needs to be something within that eviction.
Like post eviction.
Yes, post eviction assistance.
Is that like a
This is
incentive policy at the county level of like saying you can't judge whether someone's been evicted, or is that more at a higher level?
You're talking about funding, right?
Or you?
Either the funding or a way to assist them to get them back in, maybe like a second chance program or something where, the county either talks to developers, apartment complexes or whatever, to allow that, hey, the way they give the money to help to prevent them, maybe they can give the money to help, maybe do a double deposit, something so the developer can feel secure, but with letting a person in who was evicted. Especially during the pandemic, there were people who were evicted. So if they have some type of assistance either with the county to say, hey, this person was evicted, but we'll go ahead and almost be like insurance policy, backup, something to reassure the developer, because I understand from the developer's perspective or the owners of the properties, buildings, they don't want to take a risk, with the person. But, some people are working homeless, they just fell on hard times, like the way these Fortune 500 companies was able to get PPP loans and didn't have to repay them. So why do you?
Yeah, there may be, I was gonna say, it may be sort of like the same kind of program where like. if
They don't do it.
you Had some sort of
They have
arrest
some-
and you can like cleanse your record.
They don't have that.
Well,
They don't have that
that's,
program.
that's a different situation.
That's the
No,
difference.
I know, but it would be the same sort of principle that you're
Yeah.
sort of, that there's a way of like cleaning your eviction.
Cleaning your record, right? Yeah, they don't have that right now. Because what
I
they
don't
did
know.
last year is if you were, if you went through the eviction process, but then everything, like either you paid up, you stopped, that wasn't put on your record, but then you forgot about the people who actually all the way through, it's on their court records, it's on their rental records.
I was gonna say.
That's
a lot
the class of
places,
people.
They won't necessarily track it unless it has been
Right,
full court.
correct.
And a part of that is kind of similar to like ban the box legislation, right? Where for nonviolent drug offenses, there are states that are trying to prohibit landlords from accessing that information so they can't discriminate against you as you're trying to get a lease. Because you might have, a nonviolent drug offense on your record that doesn't affect your ability to be a renter, but landlords will look at that, arbitrarily decide that's a risk, and then discriminate against you from renting with them. So I think this kind of falls within that paradigm of saying, okay, you've gone through the legal process. We would want to have this removed as a category that landlords are able to look into to discriminate against people moving forward. So even if you've been evicted, landlords moving forward can't look at your court record and say, oh, well, that person was evicted, so I'm going to just preemptively screen them out.
Yeah,
In some places and I think Arlington does it, but then again, it goes back to if you didn't have to go through the whole eviction process, somehow it was paid or something, that gets taken off your record. But you have the example of a person who committed a felon can go and ask their records to be
Right.
a sponge, but you can't do that for if you had an eviction, which I think that's like, okay, so this person committed a felon, but they can have their records hidden, but this person fell on hard times and couldn't pay their rent, but their records won't be a sponge or at least hidden from to be searched by a potential apartment complex.
that definitely is a state level, policy change, but I think the post eviction assistance or even like a guarantee fund or those residents where the county sort of backstops and says, which to some degree they sort of had something, and they also have the Arlington Landlord Partnership, which is the county has like agreements with different landlords where basically if it's hard to house people because of eviction or because of like felony convictions or something, that those landlords have said, we'll work with you to try to make sure we can get them, but there's certainly a lot more that can be done. So yes. Yeah. Thank you. Other thoughts? Thank you.
This is Dory.
Oh,
Could I?
go ahead, Doris.
Yeah, I just wanted to,
Oh, who's Doris?
Real quick, Alice Hogan said about that program, she says it does, a program like that does exist for assistance. A pool of landlords rents the previously evicted.
That's the Arlington Landlord Partnership.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
It's, again, I think there's more to it, what Anika was saying, but yeah, we have certain things in that vein.
Okay.
Of course, is people come back. Danny, did you have anything?
Yeah, I had a thought on the taxes, and I don't know if this would go to state level or local, and maybe there's components of it that would be local, but essentially when a project's approved, as soon as it's approved, it's reassessed for taxes, and then the taxes they have to pay are based on, the development that's approved. But so like for a completely affordable project, they're now, facing that same assessment. I think that at the local level, the county could change its evaluation or assessment for a nonprofit ownership for a completely affordable project. I think that's something that is within their power. I'm not exactly sure the logistics, though. It might be a state level thing, but I think that would be very helpful for affordable housing development, just particularly how risky it is. I know, like, for market rate developers, it comes up often that they don't necessarily want to pursue entitlement unless they know for sure they're going to start construction right away because they have that drag on taxes. That's another thing I was thinking about is like the potential to potentially leverage AHIF, and that would more than likely be a state level thing. But if we could get a larger AHIF contribution from market rate developers as a like a tax break during that carryover phase, it might be a way to negotiate that if that was something that was within our local power.
So Dan, are you, sorry, I'm trying to follow. So this is basically getting a property tax reduction for 100% affordable housing
During construction.
during construction.
During construction. It's so from the point of approval for construction through to construction, because they wouldn't be eligible for it now until construction had been completed.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially,
2 years worth of additional tax benefit.
yeah, and it's not necessarily just construction. I mean, it could be pre-development. I mean, as soon as you're approved, you're assessed at that new tax rate, right? So, and you might not be able to build for any number of reasons. You might not have your financing together, and that takes time, and, maybe something falls through, and now you're sitting on a property that has a huge tax bill.
So it could be 4 years. You could get 4 years of benefit.
And it does happen.
I wonder for some tax relief, I have no idea if this is legal, but I know the county, I'm curious if they can say, okay, like, cause I know the Constitution sets out the categories for like the real estate tax relief program is like in the Constitution, right? Like it's, even the General Assembly doesn't really have much control over who gets property tax relief. And who, like, the specific categories of folks and the criteria that they have to meet. But I wonder if the county would be able to have a program where the county pays, like, or like gives a loan to certain categories of people for their property taxes, but then the county never collects on that. Which is a thing we do in other programs where like we're required to charge a fee for the program, but the county like never sends the bill or like doesn't care if they actually pay. It never sends it to collection. I don't know. That's potentially, I don't know if that's allowed, but it's just something that's been on my mind because I know we do that with certain programs where like the state says, well, you have to charge people for this. The county says, cool, but I don't care if they pay. So like,
I think it has to be a relief program and not a care.
what do you mean?
I mean, it has to be like a program where you apply for relief and then it gets.
Oh, no, I'm not saying I don't care if they pay their taxes, but saying like, yes, you would apply. So let's say if constitutionally you can't say anyone other than elderly folks are able to qualify or, elderly disabled, I think, for like the tax relief program. But we have other categories of people that we think, need that relief and would meet it based on the income criteria or something. Say, okay, well, the county is actually going to, out of the general funds, like pay their property taxes as a loan, but then they just don't collect it. It's the same thing. It's extending tax relief, but without changing the Constitution. I don't know if that's allowed, but yeah, just it reminded me that there are ways to do things that are creative if people really want them done. not super apt to what we're just talking about, but it went through my head. Oh, go ahead, Doris.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did something and cut myself off. So if you're looking at public housing authorities, you might want to look in and public housing. You might want to look into Fairfax County because they got in trouble, and 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 this is sometime in the last 10, 15 years. They got in trouble and they switched. Like they had a public housing property on the grounds of the government center, and they had it there for some time, but they changed everything over to vouchers, RAD vouchers. So, and they kind of, in quotes, got out of the business of public housing, but they still have the authority. So, but they get bonds. I know that they have county bond issues a lot. So.
Thank you, Doris. Yeah, I mean,
I
there's
just look into it because I was following them out there, kinda, while this was going on, but they don't actually have a housing commission. They've got the housing authority, and then they also had an affordable housing. Um, uh, it was like a task force, but it wasn't a housing commission as such. So and Tom Fleetwood, who is, I believe, still the head of um, their housing authority out there. Um, he went through all of that. He was there while they were going through all of that.
Yep, thank you, Doris. Yeah, and I agree. Like before we would make any actual recommendation, we would do a lot more research and make sure that the full commission was on board, and that goes for all of these. But yeah, that's
And there's
helpful.
all kinds of administrative things that you had to do for HUD and stuff like that, and so I don't know exactly what's left, except they've got various properties that that may have been other public housing, but that they also have a lot of um, uh, affordable housing, doing it through HUD funding pools that are not necessarily part of the housing authority.
Yep. Oh, thank you for that, Doris. Other thoughts, ideas?
One little addition to those, I would love for the county to do a survey of the public land, some sort of survey to figure out what are we talking about? We're talking about co-location.
I feel like they probably have that as part of their capital improvement plan, right?
They do.
The public land meaning the concept of like the
Co-located.
libraries.
Right, exactly.
That,
Like, is
that publicly and not.
maybe that
vacantly.
exists. Maybe that
Right.
exists. I would just be interested in, like, does that
I
exist?
I would think
I'm
it.
not
it must
that
be in some
technical
capital
on public housing authorities. I know that in Alexandria, the senior housing was also public housing. So, and they've got enough public housing authority too. So, I think it's the only two in the area. but don't quote me,
Okay.
except for
Thanks.
DC.
Thanks, Doris. Yeah, and maybe we could talk more about that offline. Other recommendations? And I can just ask them to the county, if they have, so we can get a better sense of like, how much public land are we talking about? And I'm sure they have that.
I mean, the vacant land, I really get into this thing and I've talked to, we don't have vacant land. I mean,
Right.
we don't have
We
vacant
have two
land.
golf courses.
Okay, and then I
Oh,
mentioned.
good try.
Yeah,
Greg.
good try.
Those.
But that bus thing, when we talked about the bus, where they're gonna put in the buses, I said that would be a great place for a starter home, for a development of starter homes and stuff like that. But the libraries are great. We're not using the libraries. And the library in Ballston is perfect. It's a perfect place.
Build a,
Yeah,
Did you
it's,
Oh, yeah, that's used heavily.
no, no,
I
no.
know.
What they can do is they can, Goodwill's gonna be on the.
Oh, okay. Got it.
You could
The
put,
funny thing is that library is really not that old, because I remember when I first moved to.
Yeah.
That was probably 30 years ago.
but I just think it's a very creative list that we have here, so it's.
Yeah. Or, I don't know how feasible this is, but look at our parks and say, let's build housing and put the parks on top of the housing.
Do that.
Well, but the
Creative.
community
I like
centers,
that.
I mean, I do think, I was just thinking, oh, Lover Run was not that old. They should have thought about that. But that's right on.
Lover Run took forever to be built.
Yeah, I know. So, but there are, and they've done other creative things like Langston, they built with the school. So, but those are perfect examples of where we can be creative.
Was
And-
Arlington Mill? That's the one
And
that.
Arlington Mill has
seen.
housing on top of it.
It's
So
actually next to it.
next,
Oh,
as part of the complex, I guess.
I mean, we are landlocked, so we gotta be creative here.
Yeah.
I also think in addition to our elevated parks, I think 66.
Yeah, we're just gonna build
Yeah, ramp
housing.
over it.
But, yeah.
That's fine with me. I have Gateway Park in Roslyn where we're, you know,
All it takes is extraordinary amounts of money. So, any,
or even, the Pentagon, I think was gonna annex.
Right.
Gonna get.
yeah, I heard that the Pentagon was, use some of their parking lot for something since ever.
well, we did a land swap, right? With I think the cemetery though. I don't know what we're getting up with the land that we
Well,
got.
it got me started and I look at it from my condo with the state parking garage there. That would be a perfect place. That would have been a perfect place in that land, that huge piece of land in back of the Sheridan there that was on, up for sale for $10 million. I don't know what they're building there, but that would have been perfect for workforce housing, starter home, townhouse, whatever, just like we have Colonial Village here. This would be the 22nd, first century Colonial Village. We have to do something to house people. 40-year-old first-time home buyer just does not cut it.
I'm gonna add the, build parks and
Your
public
elevated
housing and
parks.
stuff. Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Go for it.
I would say in the same vein as the county-owned land, just within the, the right of ways, like some roads could get a road diet. I know it wouldn't be like a huge number, but I mean, there's just certain areas where we're a little overbuilt on road infrastructure. Even within neighborhoods, you have these like roundabouts that a lot of times they make sense, but sometimes they're connected to extra roads and extra paving that's just not necessary, that are like the size of single family home lots.
So Danny, your suggestion is looking at unnecessary roads
Easements.
or,
Easements, roads, right of ways. I mean, there's a lot more land than you think sometimes. I mean, there's a lot of space that's being unnecessarily utilized.
That's interesting.
This one in Roslyn.
Are you guys aware of the one university project that Fairfax County did out there? It was the land that used to be the institution for people with ID, DD. So, the state, the
I mean,
state
Lorton, the prison.
divested itself of,
yeah, Lord,
of
JC,
all those
that's a
properties
cool. Years.
and
It's a cool spot.
so have you gone down, because they have all kinds of different, housing styles out there on that property. So I just thought I'd mention it.
They had that land, and I still don't know what they're gonna do with it. They said they was gonna put a behavioral health hospital on it. It's off of what is that?
Crown Springs?
Yeah, it's just like,
That is
Yeah,
something,
owns it.
I think that should be happening in the next
Yeah,
year, like
yeah.
going through the site
They've
plan
cleared
process.
it. They've cleared it.
that would have been a good amount of land to do affordable.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be cool if they could do that too. I don't know. Someone should go lobby VHC help add that. Probably.
They should build housing for their nurses.
For the nurses, that's exactly what I was gonna say.
Where's housing?
Well, no, that's gonna be a county behavioral health hospital, not VHC. It's not gonna be VHC, it's gonna be county.
Are you sure?
That's what is his name? Matt, say, how you say his last name again?
DeFronti?
Yes.
I wasn't that part of a county land swap?
Yeah.
They, like, VHC got that land from the county and then they gave something else to the county and now I'm pretty sure that's VHC Health.
Okay.
I was meeting.
It
with
was
VHC.
VHC Health and
It
they
is.
moved to that tower, but that land was supposed to be used to expand the county's behavioral health because they were saying they was getting overswamped at the
I think that's still VHC is gonna be.
okay.
But it's a good point looking at, and I don't, when it comes to like the private sector and saying like, hey, if you're gonna build this, can you also consider housing? I don't know how we do that in Arlington, but if we don't have an approach,
Yeah.
that is probably something we should look at.
No, the market's forcing them because they're not gonna be able to house the people they need to employ, but. That's a different story.
Anything else? Okay.
Thank you for challenging us to do this. It was actually therapeutic. Therapeutic and hopeful, keep hope alive. I mean.
Okay, well, like I said, this will be.
Can I say one thing
Yep,
about
go
the about the accessible, increasing the number of accessible units, type A units that are required under the building code. What I wanted to say was, make sure that what that would do is it seeks to put that requirement in the building code, and all new housing would have to meet that standard for the accessible units, and that's the only way that I see that we can get a sufficient number of accessible, come up to a decent stock, is to increase it. And then when it's in there, our building code official has said all along, and he said it loud and clear, whatever it was, September meeting or July or August, whatever, I'd have to go back and look. He said it loud and clear. You put it in there, and I'll enforce it. But if it's, like a federal law and it has standards, if it's not in the building code, then it's not enforceable by me, and so the only reason they enforce the fair housing requirements is that it had to be put in there as safe harbors, but he So all I'm just saying is that, and this came up during the work on the affordable housing master plan, that we really needed to try to do that. And there was one bill that went through, but it had the words, and it went through in 17, but it had the words affordable in it, and they used that excuse to get rid of it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Doris. I have it added to the list. So we did note that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think our next agenda item is actually listed on the agenda, but we do have development updates.
Yes, so I
Well,
have,
this is a long session, so maybe it won't work out. It's so close, and
Oh.
there's so many changes.
Thank you, Doris. I think we've moved on to another development or
Thank
another
you. I just
agenda
wanted to
item.
put that in. Thank you.
Thank you.
so we have 3 development updates tonight. The first one is on Goodwill. So the Goodwill AHIF loan documents are going to the board in November. We are set up for a close on construction December. And one change that you'll see in that board report, if you do decide to read it, we will be dispersing the home funds at the full closing. We were originally planning on doing an early ground lease closing and getting those home funds out the door for a number of reasons. However, there was some issues getting all the approvals through the senior mortgage lender, and because of that, it created a bit of a delay. Those problems have been resolved, but due to timing and how close we are to closing, we're going to disperse all those home funds at the regular construction closing. So that will be in December. And then there's a update on Marbella Site A, which is also called, and I might get this name wrong, the Joe and Midge Holy Legacy Homes. So they're now leasing 234 affordable units. About 70 are actually already pre-leased. So going fast, but all those units from Marbella Site A are coming online now, which is great.
Is that the one of the 50?
The lights are, I went by it today, the lights are on.
Yeah, it's right across.
So it says the new name, it's not Marabella?
So it was Marbella Site A. The new name is Joe and Midge Holy Legacy Homes.
Oh, okay.
Founders.
Yeah.
But they were some of the founders of,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
The original,
Right.
they were
yeah,
like
they
five of them.
created it, yeah.
And then 2 Barcroft updates. So the first one is the Barcroft 7th and final use permit. So in November, the county board is going to consider the 7th and final neighborhoods form-based code use permit for the Barcroft apartments. It includes 4 buildings in section 4 of the complex. It contains 77 of the property's 1335 unit total. And the mix is 25 1-bedrooms and 52 2-bedroom units. So part of the area within the use permit is within a floodplain or floodway designated by FEMA. So the applicant has identified several mitigation efforts to both comply with the floodplain management ordinance, as well as voluntary efforts to go above and beyond the minimum requirements. These include converting a basement unit to non-occupiable storage space, and that did reduce the total units from 78 to 77. All other basement areas affected by the floodway are storage space and will not be occupied by residents. The developer is maintaining their commitment to provide 1335 CAFs. So there is a unit being taken away on this phase, but it will be added back in a new construction project later. There's been no concerns raised by the community at this point. It's been reviewed by the design review committee, HALRB, the form-based code advisory working group, and then also the planning commission, where they did have unanimous approval. And so staff is recommending approval of the use permit for the November board meeting. And then one other Barcroft update. So this is on the second renovation use permit. There's going to be amendment to that one, and it's similar, having to do with the floodplain. So they will be removing 2 basement units in use permit number 2. That phase is going to go from 79 units down to 77, basically so that these units are below grade where flood possibility is in that area. And so we are making sure those units aren't occupied by people. There are no units in the floodplain. And so the other big takeaway is the amount of total cost of the property is completely unchanged through all this. All those few units that have been lost to the floodplain will be made up in new construction caps. So if there are any questions about any of those.
So when they convert it to storage, that means your storage stuff is gonna float away.
Or just be destroyed.
Yes, I would say the priority was human life and safety.
You can always replace Christmas trees.
Yeah.
But I do see your concern though.
Yeah, so it would take a lot of development costs.
I understand why it's being done.
Or they could make it like a rec room or something.
I'm not sure if they're large enough for that. I think they're smaller spaces. If you have any specific questions, I'm happy to forward them to our Barcroft lead.
No, it's okay. I was, because when she mentioned that, I said, well, yeah, that's true, but can they use the space for something else that the residents may need? But if you're saying.
I took a tour and I don't think that storage is very big.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I can't believe people live there anyways. Those things.
Oh, okay.
But they will be renovated.
Yeah, that one I think, probably not, but like the one that we saw on the tour.
Right. And then the
It's for
only,
good storage.
the only other thing was Joe picked up the
Lucky.
meeting for Lucky Gardens next week, so no meetings.
Thank you.
That's gonna be an interesting.
Oh my gosh.
Question, adaptive reuse. I know those don't come before the housing commission. Can we still get periodic updates?
Yeah.
It would be helpful just to be aware. I think there are 5 that have gone through this point.
Yeah, I think I can pull those numbers and send them offline. But then we can also talk about.
Yeah.
Something we should be proud about what they're
Or
doing.
even if it's like a once a year, twice a year, like kind of briefing on like, hey, here's what's happening, just so that we're aware of it. And I mean, because it is very focused on housing. I get that it's supposed to be a streamlined process, but it would just be helpful to have more information.
Planning commission approved that building, that street.
And then I know,
Yeah.
we talked about changing when the housing commission has projects come before it for the site plan. And I think you had said that they were going to come after the first site plan meeting, and I'd asked if we could change that to have it be before the first site plan meeting. Was there any possibility of doing that?
Everything that I've been told is that it's a planning process, and so that first public meeting is going to be hosted by planning or a planning related commission, which is the SPRC. Yeah, I just think they don't want an info item being out there before the SPRC has heard it. I'm happy to ask that question again.
Could we do it after the first SPC?
Yeah, so the plan was to slip it in between the first and the second.
Okay,
SPC.
that would be an improvement.
So
It would be an improvement. I think the challenge is still like, Joe, it'd be great if they had come tonight and then we were able to give you instructions on like,
Right.
this is
You're
the
right,
steps of
yeah.
the commission, take that back to the SPRC. Which we can't do if we don't know anything.
Right,
about the project.
good point.
So it just leaves each of our members in a position where we have to make up what we think the housing commission may feel about that.
So a point to that is, community benefits are never spoken about at the first SPRC meeting. They're always spoken about at the second one. So if we were able to use the first one as introductory, and then you could have an info item here and then discuss the community benefits at the second SPRC meeting. I think that's likely the path that planning staff.
Yeah, I guess the community benefits, we were talking about affordable housing, there's nothing for us to comment on. You know, like it's this is the base contribution,
Yeah.
this is what they've decided, or these are the two options they have to decide from, the
Right.
three. And then, I don't know, I feel like there's not a whole lot for us, whereas more so the things that I think we typically will, you know, is like, were there community concerns about this? And like, how does this, you know, impact the overall goals of the county when it comes to housing? And like, so I feel like usually the things that we comment on are not just like, you know, this is the by law affordable housing contribution.
A good example was Pentagon.
Yeah. The hotel Pentagon one, yeah.
Mm.
So I hear what you're saying, and I get that staff is probably thinking, well, the housing commission is supposed to weigh in on that, but typically there's not much to weigh in on because, you know, I guess we could say, well, can't you do more caps than you're supposed to? And they'll say, we'll certainly consider that, and then they won't.
Why would
Yeah.
they do, it's a business,
But
it's
I
not
guess
charity.
the ask is always, if something is not, you know, it's like the green building, you know, it's like, if they're following the ordinance, they're following the ordinance, you know, like.
Right.
Well, then,
if
but
I-
there's not
I
much
have
for us
people
to
more,
weigh in
like,
on.
You just told me this a year ago when I started, or like 10 years ago, when I purchased the property.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Was that it for development updates?
Yep.
Okay. And then, our subcommittee updates, did you want to provide an update?
We're almost done with our recommendation. Should be just I think we should be able to present to the, you know, housing commission in December and kind of vote on that. So we can just have that as an agenda item. Thanks.
When's that meeting, November?
17th, I think,
For the public
For the
engagement
engagement.
or community engagement. So,
Yeah.
Or task force. Thank you.
Yeah, also in the green building sort of thing, last I heard, they are going to the county like very soon with some sort of or some sort of draft like update to the green building policy. That may not be as complete as it updated it, but I don't think there's enough time for us to make any sort of comments on it, so I think.
Wait, so this thing that we've been asking for updates for like a year on and saying like, when can we be updated? And they were like, oh, it's not gonna be for a while. Now there's not enough time to come to us and update us.
I got an email from one of the CQEQ members about it, and I was trying to decipher exactly what she was saying, but
Okay.
maybe like there wasn't a ton of public engagement on this round, but there will be in a future round, or I was a little confused.
If
but-
we could get some clarity, I don't know if you can work with Alex on that.
Okay.
To just see, cause that was something that we had asked to,
Yeah,
you know, have come before us before they go to the board.
okay. Yeah, Alex, you can look at that, that would be helpful, thank you.
Any update for SITSAC?
Just that we finished, all of the proposal evaluations. And just, I think it's useful to note that this year, we got about 10 more applications than in prior years. And, about 10 new nonprofits, well, about seven new nonprofits were involved. So that's just an interesting commentary of perhaps what funding is looking like this year. But yeah, and a number of new programs, even if they were from our typical providers. So
Great.
Mine always conflicted with Wendy's, Katie's subcommittee. So my New Year's resolution is to start going
So
to
the HJLRB.
if they open the door for me.
And I have an update on the affordable housing ordinance, like what happened after our recommendation. So my understanding is that I believe Barbara is planning to patron legislation in the Senate. And I think Alfonso Lopez may be the patron in the House, although that's not confirmed yet. I haven't met specifically with the county board on it, but they've said we're working on it. We're aware of it. There's nothing really discussed yet. When it comes to our legislative priorities, they have not gotten back to me about meeting. I know they're going to be talking about that next week. So I will follow up again and request a meeting to talk through our legislative priorities. Hopefully that can happen before the board meeting, but if not, I'll try to push to have it in between when they introduce the draft package and then vote on final approval in December. But yeah, any other updates, subcommittees or liaison reports? I think that's it. Well, thank you all. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
And I will,
I'm sorry.